right.
I'm so, honestly, you don't know how happy I am to be able to be with you guys.
Oh, look at this setup now. How cool is that?
Right?
Good to have you with us, Tessy.
It's so great to be here.
What time do you call this, Tessy? I'm only messing. I'm only messing. Lovely, lovely to have us have you in the studio with us. So, we actually, I would love to know your opinion on this. Just whilst we were waiting on you joining back in the room, we were discussing the high five, and then we're saying what an amazing, relatable thing that is for young kids. Makes it a wee bit cool, but also gets them thinking about these five people that they can reach out to. So I told Danny and Ben about something that I remembered recently, which had been stuck in the back of my mind. That was when I was at primary school. They came up with an initiative called the Friendship Stop, and essentially it was like a traffic sign within the school, and it had friendship stop on it. And if there was a child in the playground and they felt lonely or felt as if they didn't have any friends, they would need to go and stand at this friendship stop and expect other kids to then come up and speak to them. And when I remembered that, I've just told the lads there, like, I thought that was heartbreaking. That was so sad. And Danny said that he said, apologies if he gets stick for it, but he thought that was a little bit of a cop out potentially from the schools. What I think about that is this is similar almost to the mental health argument of it. It's putting the impetus on the individual to reach out, and having the bravery and the courage to discuss that, as opposed to other people having the skills to identify if people are struggling. What's your opinion on that? I'd be really interested to hear.
I think, do you know what? I think that it works both ways. One of the things that we know we encourage our young people to do is to create their form of support network in school. So a lot of the time, especially in primary school, we have friendship benches. We encourage a lot of friendship benches. And that's, sometimes it takes a lot for a young person to identify that I need to go and speak to someone, or simply going to know, if you knew that there was a lunchtime friendship bench and you just took yourself to that friendship bench, you know immediately that you'll be supported. And I think that's so important, is helping everyone say, look, there is something about saying, as a school, we would actively and proactively create support systems within our school to make sure that no young person's lonely, and young people have, even it might be a game session, a games room, you know that if I walked into this space right now, I would have friends. And that's so important for a young person, because it takes, when we were talking earlier, do you remember when we were talking about self-regulation and self-identification? That's an important skill to have when you know that, well, I have no friends and I'm lonely, I don't know, I have anyone to talk to, but I know that if I go to the friendship bench, I will make friends. That's the first step. So I would really, even that, if every single school in this country had that form of support, that's the first step towards creating a more a safer environment for young people, because we talked about safety and the importance of safety, right?
Yeah, I think the idea of a friendship bench already just sounds so much more friendly.
Yeah, I think the intention is brilliant, and maybe it's me being like potentially cynical, or maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm seeing it from the perspective of a child who's potentially lonely, potentially have been bullied or picked on, feeling really alone, then going to a bench in order to try and seek friendship. That could potentially be an opportunity for people who are picking on that person to then pick on them further, because they're clearly on their own. They're standing at this place where it's very clear that they've not got friends. Maybe that's me being cynical, and maybe that wouldn't happen in reality, but how I imagine like my playground from school is, if that place existed, where if someone wasn't kind of being befriended and struggled to find friendship within their peers, had to seek that from a separate place, that could then be an extended reason for them to be picked on by bullies, if that makes sense. And I just wonder, would that be a factor if that was introduced nationwide? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, so I mean, we actively encourage, part of our anti-bullying strategy and anti-bullying program is encouraging young people to create that safe form of friendship benches, lunchtime support clubs, because on one hand, bullying thrives when a young person is isolated. Bullying thrives if you think that Tessy has no friends and no one's going to stick up for Tessy, then you're likely to, then you might think, oh, I have power over her. But if you knew that I had a community, I have a tribe, it might be the team of anti-bullying ambassadors, they're my tribe. And if you touched me, because when I'm with them, I'm safe immediately. Because what happens is what friendship benches or safe spaces are meant to create is allows you the opportunity, the safety to have conversations, to build friendships. Because ultimately, what you would do is to then begin to build friendships. Maybe you met another person who came into that room and you now make friends with that person. You might not need that support service longer than a week, maybe longer than a day, because you've made a friend there, and then you can take that friendship to the rest of your playground's life in that sense. But I think that when young people are in spaces like that, it helps build confidence, it helps them build friendship. Sometimes we've often seen young people even when they've had a breakdown in their own relationships, they've brought that into those kind of spaces, and just chatting to the other young people have helped resolve those problems. So I would definitely, absolutely recommend. I mean, there's always going to be people who would, try and pick on anyone irrespective. And again, that comes back to these friendship benches or support or safe spaces do not sit in isolation. They have to sit within a broader ecosystem in that school where there is support. And so if you found, for example, a young person has come into that space and someone else decides to pick on them, then I know that the team if it's a team that we've trained, they know what to do. They know how to escalate that to a teacher so that that issue is dealt with.
I've just sent a question within because we're streaming live on Facebook just now. So I've just sent a comment to anyone who's watching, see if they have any questions. And one thing that then popped into my head, which I would think would be a very obvious question, potentially from a parent whose children or child has been bullied. What's the recommended course of action when something like that happens? Because of course the parent's going to be so emotionally charged, they want to get involved. I remember something I got taught when I was back at school. This wasn't my parent that said this, but it was one of my friend's parents that said, well, if you get hit, you go back and hit them twice as hard. And I know sometimes that's a parent's response, which is absolutely not what we would advocate. What course of action would you suggest parents take? Again, especially because they're going to be so emotionally connected to it, aren't they?
Absolutely. So this is a really interesting one because, yeah, as a parent, you want to go in there and fix things. And one of the first things I would say to parents is don't be a superhero. Like, no, don't. Your primary responsibility is to support your child. Like, absolutely. Let that be your absolute focus. Because if your child is being bullied or your child is struggling at school or is not making friends, my primary thing is support your child at home, give them the tools, maybe talk it through, understand what the issues are. Now, if this is a bigger problem, absolutely go and speak to the teacher. I would never recommend going to fix it with your child's friendship group or going to speak to the children because you are escalating it in a way that's not right. Speak to the school and make sure that the school understand what the school is doing. I would check in with the school from time to time to make sure that that issue is being dealt with. But to be honest, my priority as a parent is focus on your child, help them build. There's nothing as resilience or hope is so powerful when a young person is going through anything. When you're building their resilience, you're giving them hope that things will get better. That alone is fundamental in helping preserve our mental well-being. Because when you are hopeless and everything looks dark and dire, that's almost a shutting down, right? And what you want to do is to make sure that child does not shut down, that you're building their resilience, you're giving them hope, you're supporting them at home, you're creating that safety. But please, by all means, do speak to the school and make sure that the school is dealing with it. Now, we might come to a stage where maybe you feel the school is not tackling it properly. If it's possible to escalate it further, think about the other networks that are around, maybe a PTA or Parents Teachers Association. Perhaps you might be able to bring in other parents. But to be honest, that would not be my first point of call. I would look at how do I escalate this if nothing's happening. But like I said, there's two priorities as a parent. Work with your child, build their resilience, offer them hope, but also speak to the school. But please do not ever try and go to the other young people, because you're just creating a war. Because if it's my child, if I feel like another parent has come to attack in that sense, my child, that would get my back up, and it's just becoming messy.
Yeah, it just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it? I'm going to ask this to Alex Holmes when he's on later as well, but I'd love to ask you as well. We pulled a stat. 55% of, correct me if I've got this wrong, by the way, 55% of us were bullied in school in some way, and then 69% of young people said it damaged their mental health.
Yeah.
Doing the work that you do, does that number surprise you?
No, it doesn't at all, which is why I talked about 1 in 2 young people. Does not surprise me. It makes me, so this is where it makes me upset. Like I said, as a young person, I experienced this firsthand because of my height, because of the apparent privileges that I had at the time, and that made other people uncomfortable. I grew as a parent. One of the primary things I wanted my own children to be were kind, decent humans, knowing that I had experienced negativity from other young people. I wanted my children to understand the values of kindness, of respect, and being able to just respect people, even if we don't often agree with them, whether they look like us or they don't. Just respect people, because ultimately they're humans. What's really upsetting is that we almost are in this circle of what's happening to parenting. How are we, if we've experienced stuff, why aren't we teaching our children? Why aren't we talking about this more in the home, that we are teaching our children to be good people, so that our children are not, going out into school and hurting people? I often wonder why it is so easy as a parent, or it's easy as a parent to say, oh, look, my child is being bullied. How many times have we seen parents go, oh, my child is a bully. How can I help my child stop being a bully, right? And there's something about, we need to constantly, we're going to ultimately fix this. We cannot keep having this circle grow. This is it just repeats generation after generation. And what makes it worse in our time today is, look, when I was 13 and I experienced bullying as a child, at least I could go home and I was safe. I didn't have the internet. No one recorded me crying when I was upset. And I had the safety of home until I went back into school the next day. Today, everything plays out online. What kicks off in the playground often escalates online, and then that's a much wider stage, which makes it worse for our young people. So today, the effect is even worse than it was perhaps when I was younger. And that means that we cannot constantly blame the school or blame tech. We have to take responsibility as adults, that these values of compassion, empathy, kindness, respect, that we are teaching our children those values. Because if we do not do this, it is what plays out in the classroom. This is what plays out in school. This is why you have kids say incredibly mean things to each other. And you go, where did they learn that from? We just need to pull this back in and begin and teach those values, so that our children will be well. The scale is horrible right now, and we just need to teach. We kind of need to bring it back down and say, look, guys, we all need to survive. We all need to thrive in this world. Like, we're only here for just such a short time. It's awful if your entire experience of life, or maybe of school, is so mad with unpleasant experiences, and we just need to do better.
Yeah. Ben, does that 55% of adults being bullied, does that surprise you?
No, unfortunately, not at all. I think everyone at some stage in life, either very mildly or very severely, has been bullied at some point, whether that be a comment that's been made about appearance, clothing, accent, color of skin, anywhere they're from. There's always been elements of that. If you think back to certainly my time in school, we've all seen it happen to people. We might not have been on the receiving end of it, but we've all seen it. So I'm not surprised by that stat at all. If anything, I would have thought it would have been higher, because school, certainly when I was at school, could be quite a horrible place. I don't know if that's the same for you, Danny.
No, it's one of the, potentially can be one of the most vicious places, can't it, at school? You know, like you said, we've all got memories of either first-hand experiencing it or witnessing it on a playground or in a cafeteria, or, you know, it can be a really vicious place. So the stat doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. Tessy, how big a role does helping the parents and equipping the parents play in this mission? Because we can sit here all day and talk about equipping young people with the tools to survive, and to get through this pandemic, if you like, of battling poor mental health. But how critical is it that we also equip the parents? Because a lot has changed since those parents were children themselves. The culture is very different now. Schools are very different now. We live in a social media age now where things can be recorded, like you said. And, you know, how important is it that we help the parents keep up with that change as well? Because if the kids are equipped, but the parents aren't, then we could still find ourselves in this loop, like you described.
Absolutely. So one of the great question, Danny, and one of the things that we do at the Diana Award is looking at that entire ecosystem, where we know that it's not just about the young person; it's everyone around them, from parents to teachers to grandparents. And we do campaigns. In a couple of weeks, we have a campaign coming up that's about don't suffer in silence. The campaign is aimed really at the entire community, is about everyone, families not suffering in silence, encouraging your child not to suffer in silence. But also we do, in just about the end of August, when everyone's thinking about going back to school, we run a back to school campaign. And I'll tell you what, that campaign is absolutely geared towards parents. It's reminding parents that yes, your child is going back to school, you are buying pens, you're buying school uniforms, you're doing all that prep. Please do not forget to prep values. Do not forget to prep that your child should be the kind of friend they would like to receive or they would like to have. That campaign is so important for us because it's so geared towards parenting and the reminder that back to school is not simply the materials that we need to go back to school, but it's about our behavior as well.
Oh, I absolutely love that. We've got a question for you, Tessy. Can you see this? Has that popped up?
Yes, I can.
I'm going to read it out anyway. So we've had someone called Paige Keane. Thank you so much for asking a question, Paige, or sharing your insight. She said, I'm a previous member of the Diana Award Youth Board. Amazing charity and amazing team led there. I think Tessy, it would be great for Tessy to talk about how important it is for peer-led approach when tackling bullying behavior.
Absolutely. Paige is awesome, by the way. Like, I hope she's listening. Paige, you are incredibly awesome. And you should have had her on this podcast, because young people play an incredible role in tackling bullying. They, like I said, they do three things. One is that they know how to educate their peers about behavior. They have the vernacular, they have the language skills. They also know how to de-escalate. It means that in some way they are that first aider in schools. By the way, these young people are trained young people. We train young people across the UK to play that role, to become anti-bullying ambassadors. But thirdly, I think that young people also play a role in educating, in creating that safe space in their school. I talked about having a friendship bench or a support hour or something. We train young people to think about their school environment and to bring their creative skills into creating a safe space in their schools. And I have seen young people use use the art, use music, use whatever skills they have to create. It's not like Paige. I know that she writes poems, she runs a blog. They use all of their own internal resources to help make the school safe, and which is so important. You know, one of the things that a few examples will be things like, you know how easy it looks on the outside if you're a parent perhaps and your child says, oh, I've been kicked out of a WhatsApp group with my friendship group, and you think, oh, it doesn't matter, don't worry. For a young person, they understand the importance, how important that is, and the meaning of that. And that's why it's so important that young people, they understand the vernacular, they understand the dynamics. They are able to almost to begin to treat it. They're able to say, okay, let's fix this. Let's find out what's happening. Let's bring the friendship group together. Let's talk about this. And it's almost that absence of an authoritarian figure that makes this work. Because suddenly you bring a teacher in and then it gets so official. Whereas if a young person goes in immediately to begin to try and de-escalate, to begin to unravel it, untangle it, and of course that young person knows how to escalate if they need to. But I think that's where young people play a vital part. And I'm proud that across the UK we have young people in about 4,000 schools who are anti-bullying ambassadors, who are doing an incredible work. You know, one of our biggest desires would be to have a team of trained ambassadors in every single school in the UK. So help us get there. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Tessy, when I'm just imagining if there's any parents sitting listening to this and they might be thinking, what signs are there, or what things could they identify or to look out for in case potentially one of their children is a victim of bullying and maybe the child hasn't came to them about it?
I think that a good sign would be being quiet, not talking about their friends so much. It's changing behavior, basically, a change in just noticing any huge change in behavior. Maybe that child often comes home and talks a lot about their friendship, their friends, and suddenly they're no longer doing that. Or they come home and they used to be quite, you know, not loud, just chatty, and suddenly that isn't happening. It's that immediate change in behavior. And that doesn't often mean that there's something awful going on, but it's the trigger to say, let's have a conversation. What's happening? Let me check in with you. I think parents regularly should check in, and checking in has to be done in a way that, again, it's not about being a hero or trying to be a super mom or trying to come in with a cape. It's just checking, because ultimately you're there to support your child. And parents having that ongoing conversation of how was school today, what happened, what, you know, oh, tell me more a little bit about that, tell me more a bit about this thing. That's how, if you have those conversations regularly, my hope is that you'll be able to pick up in difference of behavior or changes in mood. And then from that, you can say, oh, you seem a bit more quiet today. What's happened?
And I guess it's about being genuinely interested in the children in their day as well. And I know that might seem like an obvious thing, because we would think, well, all parents are wanting to be interested in their children, and they will be. But sometimes that does slip. Parents are stressed. There's lots of stuff going on. They might just ask the child when they come in from school, how was your day, as a habit. And because they hear the same thing over and over again, you know, sometimes it may go over their head. So it's about being, for the parents to be 100% present as well, and take that time to really be invested in what the children are saying when they come home from school.
100% is ask the question, but listen, please listen to the answer and be able to pick up what's different. And just a simple tell me more. We're all busy, like I get it. Like we are multitasking, we are doing loads of things as parents, but for a 10-minute, and it doesn't matter if it's straight after, you know, fit the 10 minutes in any part of your day, and just being able to say, how was your day? Tell me more about this. Tell me more about that. Oh, tell me, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. It's those little things that shows that it's not just a routine. How are you? Fine. Okay, we go. You know, let's get beyond the, I'm just asking, how are you? because I just have to do it, but I don't really want to know. It's let's genuinely want to know. Let's genuinely be inquisitive. Let's genuinely be curious about our children's life.
And how important is it for all of us to be involved in this? So I'm not a parent. Well, all four of us in this room, we aren't parents here. But it's such a cop-out, isn't it? It's a cop-out when it comes potentially to people voting. They're saying, oh, it's just one vote. What difference can I make? You hear it all the time when it comes to protecting the environment. Oh, I'm just not recycling. I'm just one person. What difference can I make? But I know it's a cliche thing to say, but it's a cliche thing to say because it is the right thing to say, is that we need all of us to be involved in this and get behind this, don't we, Tessy?
Oh, 100%. We are all part of that ecosystem. You know, you might not be a parent, but you might be an uncle, an auntie, a godparent, whatever. We all have a responsibility. You know, there's an African proverb that says it takes an entire village to raise a child. And what that means is that everyone's genuinely interested in that child. Everyone will see that child, like will see that child crossing the road, and you want to say, oh, hang on, the road's not quite clear. Doesn't mean that they're your child, that you're just interested. And I think we all have that commitment to make that right. We all have the commitment to remind the young people in our ecosystem about those values of kindness, about being an upstander, making sure that you're just not walking past. Like when you see something, even something that's been said about someone online that might be hateful and awful, that you're not liking the hateful comments. Instead, you're reaching out to that person. And if you cannot do it openly, you're reaching out to that person's DM and say, hey, I saw that comment. I hope you're okay. It's being the type of friend that we would like to have. And if we constantly remind young people and ourselves, because adults, we're also involved in this thing, you're never too old to experience bullying or to experience the effects of bullying. And we're talking about mental health now, and all of those things lead to how well our mental health is. So it's seeing the awful comments online, and don't go and like that person's comment when you know it's a negative comment. Surely you know that's giving power to that person who's left the negative comment. Instead, reach out to the person who is on the receiving end and just check in with them. And we say to young people, if you cannot do it openly, maybe you're scared of the repercussion on yourself, then go into their DM or just reach out to them, maybe see them in school the next day and say, oh, are you okay? I saw that comment and I didn't think it was right. It's just, ultimately it's about being kind humans. That's all we're asking everyone to do.
Yeah, it's just bringing that unity and community back, isn't it?
I love that.
We're probably going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. So I've been hogging you and asking you all the questions. So I'm going to pass over to Ben and Danny and see if you've got anything that you want to...
I fall into the trap every time we film podcasts where I just sit and listen and I forget that I'm actually meant to ask questions.
I do that as well.
But I have got a question, Tessy, and it's kind of coming back to, I guess, the barriers to what's stopping us communicating and expressing our feelings and essentially getting to the bottom of them. I touched on it earlier about this age we live in now with technology and social media and Instagram and Facebook and comments and that kind of stuff. I think that's played a huge factor in almost driving a wedge between young people and parents and potentially elderly people. And I think that could potentially be a barrier which is stopping young people talking to potentially older people. You won't understand, you're not a kid or you're too old. And I also think on the flip side, maybe parents and elderly people might think, oh, when I was your age, I would have done this. We've all heard that before, right? But the fact is, it's not the same as when they was your age. It's times have changed, right? How do we try and bridge that gap and bring it together again so we can have these conversations and like you just said, be the friend that you would want yourself, even if that person is maybe 20 years younger or 30 years older? How do we bridge the gap and help people start having these conversations that desperately need to be had?
I think these are conversations, that we have to bring back to our homes. We just have to constantly, I often think about, when I was young and you're growing up and at some stage in your life, especially if you're female, or even males, you had the conversation about boys and girls and the bees and all of that stuff. You had it once and that was it. Your parents had it once and then that's it. They never. to me, these are conversations that we must have every single day on our dinner table. Every week, we remind our children, and as a family, we remind ourselves our commitment to be good citizens, either online or offline. We shouldn't be different people online and then a different person offline. It's the same person. How do we bring our best selves and always be the best version of ourselves? I think that yes, there is perhaps with the older generation, the older person, oh, I'm not quite sure about tech, and the young person lives online. Let's learn it together. I love the fact that when there is a challenge on maybe TikTok or something, especially when my kids were slightly younger, they would always say, oh, Mom, have you seen this new tech? Because we embrace tech together. Right now, I often say to parents, when you're teaching your child to ride a bicycle, you do it with your child. You go out on the road and you're on that bike with them. When you're teaching your child to swim, you go into the pool with them. But somehow when our children get to age 9 or 8, we give them the smartphone and we leave it to them to navigate it themselves. Whereas this should be an opportunity to navigate together. Whilst I was in Oman, I had a session with parents, and I had this beautiful story from a grandparent who was in the room, who had just flown in to visit her grandchildren. And she said to me that when she arrived, she saw her grandchildren had this thing on their head, and they were just watching this thing. They didn't even give her any attention, and she didn't know what it was. And all she kept hearing was the sounds these children were making. And she then said to them, can I have a go? Or what is this? And they put this thing on her head, this VR, by the way, put this thing on her head. And she suddenly saw this. She was transported to this world of beauty. And she then said, oh my goodness, if I had this thing, I would never speak to anybody else. This VR was amazing. And so she decided that actually she would want to be involved with it with her grandchildren, and they collect together. They created a time slot when they will do VR together. And I loved that story that she told during my session. And I thought, that's how we should embrace technology, where we're not leaving our children to it. We're not, because then it creates this gap of the kids are there and the adults are on this side of the road. But actually, we should create the time where we do it together. If it's gaming, let's do it together, and because what you get to see as well is how your child is online. You see what they're interacting with. It gives you an insight as a parent on what their behavior is like online. And it might be stuff that you can then bring into a conversation offline to tackle at some point.
Yeah, I love that. Ben, have you got any lessons for Tessy?
Definitely. I look very much to the future. So I know we're about to wrap up, Tessy. So just looking to the future, I know you've mentioned already that you've just launched your 5-year strategy, the Future Forward, in response to the COVID pandemic. My question is, what projects or campaigns have you got coming up that you're really excited to launch that we can raise awareness of here today? We know that the Diana Award has some really good programs at the minute, the Young Changemaker program, the mentoring scheme, the anti-bullying program, and then the award program itself, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout today with some of our guests. But what other projects have we got coming up over the next few years that you're excited about that we can promote and raise awareness of today?
For sure. So one of the projects I'm glad that you mentioned our Changemakers project. We, over the last year, seen from the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter moment, realizing that actually young people, whilst there is a general mental health crisis, we also recognize that young people from racialized communities do not have access to competent mental health support, to culturally competent mental health support. We heard from young people who perhaps on their way to school, they had been stopped and searched. And then you walk into school already with this huge burden for no reason of nothing that you've done. And then you walk into school and actually there's nobody to talk to, no one to de-escalate to. And then how are you meant to thrive in that entire day in school when your day has started so badly? So one of the projects that that we launched this or last year is our Changemaker project. That's again young people who are helping change, who are creating resources that really that ensures that across our schools that teachers and youth workers and medical services have culturally competent support, know how to support young people from racialized communities. And so we're launching this in the autumn. We're going to roll out a training program for schools. And, we want schools to sign up. It's so important that schools have the tools. This is specifically to teachers and other young people, that schools have access to this, that it's a free training. We never charge schools because we have people like yourselves who are helping raise money for this. We just want schools to be able to sign up and say, yeah, we recognize the need to be culturally competent. We recognize the need that when it comes to mental health, it's not about one size fits all. We need to be able to treat young people based on their experiences. But we also know that teachers don't often have all of the experiences. We want to support teachers to do great at their jobs. And so, yeah, this campaign is happening in the autumn. Please help us raise awareness. Also, of course, I mentioned about back to school in I think end of August. It's about the entire ecosystem, about parents really focusing on everything your child needs, not just the physical things, but also making sure that they set the behavior right from home before the child goes back.
One last thing I'd love to ask you, Tessy, is we've spoken about there's a lot of work to be done. We've spoken about a lot of the issues that we're faced with. Besides that, but despite that, I should say, are you feeling confident about the work and that you're doing and the future and what it holds?
Do you know, if I didn't, I would never do this job. You have to have the confidence. I mean, we had a young person like Paige who just came on a few minutes ago to tell you what to ask the question. And I see, you know what? I go to bed every night, no matter how dark the world is. I know that there are incredible young people who are using their own lived experience to shape society. And that makes me proud. I know that there are young people who are stepping up and saying, we're going to create change. We cannot let the world keep rolling as it always had. And that gives me hope. I am hopeful for a world. I'm hopeful for a better future because young people are willing to see that change. They're willing to come on board and say, no, we want better. We're not going to be satisfied with the narrative of the past. Like we've been sat here talking about when we were in school, this happened. Surely at some point we want a generation that says no more. And that gives me hope. And I know it can happen. So yeah, 100% hopeful for the future.
Yes, I love it.
That's
and
brilliant.
And the change makers are a massive part of that, of giving you that hope.
100%. Like they are honestly, like I think that if I didn't have a job that worked with young people, I don't know that I would have hope, because sometimes when I look at adults, big world, you're like, whoa, what's going on? But the young people give me so much life. They give me hope. They're just amazing.
Yeah. Fantastic. So we have got the amazing Tanya Moore coming in about 10 minutes or so. So we're going to have a little bit of a recap and talk about everything that we've discussed. So before you jump off, Tessy, look, thank you so much for being a part of this. Hopefully you'll be tuning in a little bit later to listen to some of our other guests. Where can people find out? Obviously, we're sharing non-stop about the Diana Award, but where can people go to find out a little bit more about the Changemakers and to find out more about the Diana Award and the projects that you've got going on?
Our website, dianaward.org.uk. Just Google Diana Award and our website will pop up and everything's there. The resources I talked about before, they're all there. Like everything's on the website. I will post something as well. I'll put a link on my Insta page after this. But yeah, everything's on the website. So please, we've also got a handle as well on Instagram. So please follow, but go to the website, you will see everything.
Brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Tessy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yes, that's it.
Okay, Tessy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Tessy.
Thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Cheers, Tessy. Take care. Bye. Bye. Way. Oh, she's brilliant. Eh?
Can we take these off?
We can take these off
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, with this happening.
Oh. She is just brilliant.
She's great, isn't she? She's just so inspiring. Like, imagine her just coming. Imagine like you just didn't want to get out of bed one day, and she just came and just inspired you and just got you going. She's so passionate, isn't she?
Yeah, you can see everything she said. It was with conviction and intention and passion, and it's like it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Contagious. Yeah, it's contagious. It's like, I want to like go out and do more now after listening to Tessy speak about that, you know? What she's been doing is absolutely incredible. Yeah.
I think charities and organizations need someone like her, just leading from the front, just inspiring people. It's amazing. And this is, I think it links in as well. It's like how we talk about this all the time, the importance of having a purpose. Like Tessy was like quite transparent there by saying if she wasn't directly working with these young people, she maybe wouldn't have that same drive, energy every single day because she's getting the hope from them. It's so important to have this mission and this purpose to get you up and keep you going, because then that just further motivates you and inspires you, and it's just this positive ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, incredible. And even just some of the phrases she was saying just carried so much weight. Like, I think one of the ones she used was that there must be a generation that says stop no more, and you think, wow, yeah, like what point is that going to happen? That's brilliant. And then, like I mentioned before, the future is theirs. Like, how can you not be inspired by that? How can you not be inspired to try and make a positive change on the world?
Yeah,
I love how direct she was as well.
Yeah.
You know, like we've all seen firsthand this issue of mental health, how we can kind of discuss it on a surface level but not really tackle it head on. And then you speak to Tessy and she just come in and absolutely blow the conversation up and go straight to the root causes of what needs to be, you know, dealt with. And instead of just dancing around the issue, it's like, right, this is what needs tackling. This is how we do it. This is what we've been doing. And this is how we can create change. And it's when you listen to people like Tessy, you believe it's possible, you know, because we've all been there before, where you see the size of the mission and it can be intimidating and it can leave you feeling a bit like, God, it's like a never-ending war almost. But then you speak to people like Tessy and you realize that real positive change has been made and will continue to be made, and it gives you belief.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaways was when she was just talking about this resilience. I shared a story with Ben a while back, and when I'll name drop them just in case I want to know that I'm supporting them. There was when I was at school, there was a boy in our class. He was called Matthew Benton, right? And he was a kid that he was picked on. He was bullied, and he got a really, really hard time in school. And I was involved in the teasing and the bullying. I'll hold my hands up. We were mean kids. You don't understand the effect that you're having, and you think it's just playful, and you know you're not really harming someone. But he did. He got teased badly. And in Scottish schools, when it gets to Rabbie Burns night, basically Rabbie Burns, Danny?
I have no idea what that is.
Rabbie Burns.
Rabbie Burns.
Scottish poet.
Okay.
Yeah. Old Lang Syne. Rabbie Burns sang on New Year. Anyway.
This is French to me.
Rabbie Burns. Scottish.
But he's a poet who has his own night of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in Scottish schools, when it got to Rabbie Burns night, we would have to look at one of his poems and memorize them and recite them. And it was one of these tasks that like you would hate every single year. And we'd be standing up, reading off this sheet, you know, haven't put any effort or energy into it. We just want the world to swallow us up so that we don't have to do it. And Matthew Benton, he's got picked on every single day at school, went and stood in front of the whole year and just started to sing and started singing Old Lang Syne. And he just started fucking belting it out. Wow. Didn't look at anyone. He just looked like straight ahead. Hundreds of kids sitting there straight ahead, looking straight on, and just fucking belted out. Oh, swear jar.
Twice.
That's twice.
Twice. I was waiting for you to finish what you were saying, and I was going to hit you with it.
We've got a swear jar. So if we swear, we need to donate money.
We need an actual jar.
We need an actual jar. Just belted out the song and sang. And that from that day onwards, never got picked on once.
Wow.
And I remember sitting there with a bunch of, so we must have been like 11, And a couple of boys in the class, I remember one just looked around me and he was like, fair enough. Like, fair play.
Really? Just like instant respect.
Like,
earned.
literally just like, fair play.
Yeah.
But I think about that often. I just think, imagine the courage that he woke up with to go and do that. Never probably knowing that it would work. That was never the intention, I don't think, to get people to
I
stop
wonder
thinking
what
about
his
him.
intention was.
It's
And
fascinating.
maybe
isn't
never
it?
even realised that it would have that effect, potentially. Because it's a bit of a risk to take that, because that is literally putting yourself in the firing line. If you're going to be teased about something, you're going to get teased about that potentially. So
Unless he just thought, maybe, you know what, if I'm going to be teased, I'd rather it be me living it on my terms.
incredible.
So, Matthew Benton, if this ever gets to you, thank you for teaching me at a very young age not to be a bully.